serving the heart and soul of Gloucester. This is GFM.
Now, welcome to the studio, Gordon.
His name is
actually Gordon Ray. Welcome. Could you tell us a little bit, firstly, about yourself? What makes you get involved with such a project?
Well, I'm a teacher in the city. I've been a teacher for 10 years here, and I've lived in Gloucester for 26 years. You can tell I'm not from around here. I'm Scottish originally, but I love Gloucester. I've lived here for a long time, and I guess I've felt for a long time too that there's there's not much of a choice in the city centre for families who want their kids to go to a local school. And it's bothered me for a long time that, if you come into the city centre in the rush hour, you see kids, heading every way out of the city centre to school, but nobody comes in. Nobody walks to school who lives in the city centre. And I just have felt for a long time that it's not satisfactory. Something could be done, but I never really thought there would be the chance to do something about it.
Yes, and I see that it will be a free school. Could you explain for the listeners who may be listening, we hear so much these days from the government, academies, free schools. Could you tell us exactly what a free school is?
Yes, certainly. Well, a free school is a school which is set up by a community group or a faith group, but people outside of the state education system who see a need. And the emphasis, what the government really wants to do is to address underachievement in the city centres. And they really want groups, community groups, faith groups, to apply to open these schools in the city centres, which generally tend to be the most deprived areas in the country and where there is most underachievement. Gloucester, we do pretty well, really. It's not like living in the middle of London or, in a city, Manchester. But Gloucester City does actually come out as the most deprived part of the county in terms of figures. Sorry, I don't mean to insult anyone who lives in the city centre. I love it here, but it is the most deprived part of the county, and we just think that people should have a chance to walk to school and also have a school which belongs to their community, whichever community they belong to in the city. And so our vision is a school which is really underpinned by the different communities which live here. That's our vision, really.
And I understand that it will be a faith school. Could you tell us a little about this, please?
Yes, it's going to be a church-governed school, and really the vision is underpinned by a group of teachers and accountants and representatives from 6 city churches. They're of different denominations. There are no Churches of England or Catholics among us. Not that we didn't want them, but it's just the churches which have come together tend to be the smaller, more independent churches, really. And so it will be a church-governed school with a distinct Christian ethos, which we know is very popular with people. That church schools across the country tend to achieve more than the standard state schools without this ethos. And people generally that I talk to feel very happy about a school which has an ethos like that.
Yes, and I know we are speaking off air. I did ask a question. How will this, as it's an interdenominational school, how does this practically work? Because, for example, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and then I don't know, I could have someone else, another denomination. We have slightly different beliefs. Would this affect the school?
Well, although there are many different denominations, there are some core beliefs among the Christian churches. We're not there to ram anything down anyone's throat, but we're there to underpin the school and to give it an ethos that it wouldn't have otherwise. The churches that we have are from we've got 3 of the 6 churches are from the black community in Gloucester, which we're really thrilled about. We invited all sorts of churches to get on board, but we're thrilled that we've got such a diverse group of 14 or 15 governors from 6 different churches, which are going to focus on what we've got in common. But really the faith part of the school is really the kind of bedrock. What we're really wanting to do is to give our kids a great education, but underpinning it with a community as well. And a lady said to me, she won't mind me quoting her, it was Haltia Watkins, who's a great campaigner for black achievement in the city, and I've worked closely with at Brockworth School. And she said to me, look, if you want to reach the black community, you do it through the churches. That's what underpins the community. And I've seen that myself, so we're thrilled that they want to be on board. maybe I should tell you who our governors are.
Yes.
Because people will be really genuinely pleased. We've got Charles Campbell.
Oh, yes.
Who everybody's heard of.
Yeah.
Who's a great guy. He's been an educational welfare officer. What a great asset for us. And we've got Paul Dennis.
Oh, yes.
Who's a detective in the city. I don't think he's currently a detective, but we're thrilled to have him. We've got Howard Harvey, who many people have known.
Of course, we all know him.
Maybe you've been in his taxi with him.
Yeah.
But, you know, a prominent figure in the black community. We've got Sister Blanche McCalla.
Oh, yes.
Who's, you know, a real... what can I say? You couldn't get more prominent, really, in the black community than Blanche. And Sister Joan Fulwood, who's new to Gloucester.
Oh, Pastor Fulwood's wife.
That's right, yeah, Bishop Fulwood's wife.
Yeah.
And these are our members of the Caribbean community who are our governors. We're really thrilled, and I think when you hear those names, you'll realise, our listeners will realise that this school, you know, is going to have a very, very good chance of success. Because we've said to these governors, you have to hold this school to account. They have to come in and ask the awkward questions. What are you doing about this? How are you ensuring that our kids achieve, you know? And that's a great position to be in.
Okay, now before we go any further in the interview, I know we've got some youngsters in the studio. How do you feel just hearing it about this school so far? Would you be if you were still off school age, starting school, would you be interested in going to such a school? What questions would you have for Mr. Roche? Let's start with you. You've heard about this. I know you're not starting school, you're almost finishing school now.
Yeah.
But if you could ask him any question, what would be anything that, I don't know, you think of asking him?
Would school be religious based?
Well, it's like I said, it's got to be a church-governed school, so you'll know that it's there's a Christian ethos, and this should come through in the way people are treated. Through assemblies, through some of the material that you study in class, but we don't ever want to ram it down people's throats, and we're saying from the outset it's for the whole community, and our admission policy will be that 50% of each admission year is from the church community and 50% will be from the unchurched community.
Thank you. What about you, Robin? Any questions that you would ask? Nothing? Tanya?
How would it benefit people going to the academy?
No, that's a really important question. You see, when I was a teacher at Brockworth, one of the things I noticed was that we had, I should explain, I'm not here to knock Brockworth. I loved working there, by the way. But it was in a difficult position because it had so many children coming from the centre of town. And although we tried, we just couldn't make it a city centre school because of where we were. It was 6 miles away. What we really want to be is a city centre school underpinned by the community, so that the community really feels it owns a stake. Last year, when I first shared this vision with some people, there was a black teacher in the city said to me that that the Caribbean community especially had never felt that they had a stake in a school, that they really felt they had a say, and we want to address that. You can see by the governors that, you know, people really should feel that they have a say from that community, but from all communities. You know, we've made contact with the African community, the Asian community, and we just welcome their children to come so that the school will really be representative. And then we feel that if parents are confident that they have a say in the school and that they work in partnership with the teachers, we really feel that the children will benefit in more ways than one. You know, it will be a community event. You're coming to school not because it's an institution where you get sent, you know, and you leave your family at the gate, but you go to an extension of your community. We want people from the community to be teachers. We don't really want them to be commuting up the motorway, but we welcome applications from people who live here, who love and know the city and want to really make an impact upon the people who live here. And, you know, if you work closely with the community, you're less likely to slip through the net. And because it will be primary and secondary combined, you can go all the way from the age of 4 to 6th form and be really known as a child and never underachieve without somebody noticing and ringing your family and saying, come on in, you know. And if you're naughty, well, you better watch out, because we might be ringing your pastor to come and have a talk with you as well.
To watch.
You know, and I don't mean that flippantly, but, you know, if everybody works together, less children will fall through the net.
Now, is there a danger, for some this may be a danger, it's going to be a community school, but it can seem to some people that it's going to be a black school? Because, you know, the black church are involved, and you focusing on the Afro-Caribbean community. How would you promote this to everybody in the local community?
Oh, sure. Nobody's ever, you know, thought that any particular community group would dominate. But, you know, if you walk into the school, if you walk into assembly and maybe half the children there aren't black, I would be thinking we're not reaching the right community, because if you walk around the city centre, you know, there are many more black families who live here than if you go out into the suburbs. And so you really should see a lot of black children there. But at the same time, you know, we've made contact with the Tamil group, and they've said that they would really like to send their children here. 45 parents have signed up to say this will be our first choice. At the same time, we've got 3 churches which I guess you could describe as white, and that's City Church, Gloucester Community Church, and Southgate Evangelical. There are black people who go to these churches, but they're predominantly white, and we just want the school to reflect the whole community. And it might be a few years, you know, until we're well established, that you really see every part of the community trusting it, and we will work hard to win that trust, you know, very, very hard. Otherwise, we won't have done our job.
Just some more questions. Can you tell me a little bit about the catchment zone? I know that it says community school, but I know that a lot of schools take people, as you see children coming in from all sorts of areas. Is this solely just for city centre children?
Well, we will give preference to children who live or whose parents work in the city centre, because we think that it's very important to include workers in the city, in that community as well. So if we are oversubscribed, we will take into account people's postcodes. So people who live in GL1 will be given preference. But then, you know, if you live in GL2, 3 or 4, you stand a pretty good chance as well. If we're oversubscribed, we'll do our very best to expand to accommodate, because I would hate to turn anybody away from the school. But we do see it as serving the community. And that's why we want to be, well, we're thrilled that there's a very real chance of being based in Brunswick Road. We've got discussions underway with Ecclesiastical Insurance, who very much want us to have use of some of their buildings as they move out to the docks over the next few years. So we've got ongoing discussions, and there is a very real possibility that by 2016, 3 years after we open, there's a distinct possibility that we might have the great pleasure of being in Ecclesiastical's headquarters building in Brunswick Road,
massive,
which is big.
Yes.
But then we've got a big vision. In 5 years' time, we want to have 500 to 600 kids in that school of all ages. And we're thrilled that Ecclesiastical have also said that if we get funding, they will enter into negotiations with us regarding sponsorship of some type.
Okay, that's very promising.
Yes.
Now, we've got a text in, and it says, what about children already at another school? Can they get transferred to the academy?
Yes, absolutely. When we open in September 2013, if we get the funding, we will admit 10 children per year from reception all the way up to year 8. We don't feel we can start above year 8 because it's too near exam time for children. So in the first year we will accept transfers from other schools. What we really need is people to show an interest, which they can do through our website, and I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Yes.
But yes, we will take 10 per year group, and then 20 per year group the following year, expanding to 40 per year group just after that.
So how do people show an interest? You mentioned people showing interest.
Yes, this is really important.
What do the community do?
Well, the government will only give us funding if we convince them that we've got enough financial expertise and educational expertise, and we think we've done that already. The next step is to prove that there is parental demand, that people who live in the city centre want a primary and secondary combined, that is church governed, and that is for the whole community. And what we have to demonstrate to the Department for Education is that enough people have said to us, if the school opens, it will be my first choice.
Okay.
And the best way for people to do that is through our website. And it's very easy to remember. It's www.cityacademygloucester, all one word, .co.uk. So cityacademygloucester.co.uk. And there you'll find a contact page. And if you would be willing to make it your first choice, if it were to open, then you just simply put in your name and your postcode and the age of your child or children that the school year they would enter next year. And then that counts as evidence of parental demand for us. We only need 80 names of children to prove to the government we can do it. We're already up to about 50 or 60, but every single one makes a difference. And if we can prove to them that there's a lot more than 80, it's even more in our favour.
Yes. It sounds all very interesting. I've got a lot of text coming in here.
You're listening to the Community Link crew on GFM 96.6.
Now, we did have a call into the studio asking this question. You mentioned that a pupil could have a teacher from the age of 4 going all the way up until 18 or 19. The question was, if there is some difficulty with that teacher, how would the academy deal with that? Because in some schools, you deal with them for 4 years, then you're out and you're moving on. But if there is a clash between teacher and pupil, so you're not always going to get along, how would the academy deal with that?
Great question. I ought to clarify, you couldn't have the same teacher from 4 to 6th form. It's the same school from 4 to 6th form, but we would have primary specialists and secondary specialists.
Right.
What we really want to do is for children to have the same class teacher for a good chunk of the day from the age of 4 to the age of 11, and really build a strong relationship, and then starting in secondary all the way through. If you've got a massive clash with your form tutor, of course we want to put the child first, and we would do everything we could to resolve that. And what I don't want is for children to have the same experience that some of my children have had, where you're just told by the school, oh, I'm sorry, it's our policy, we don't change, you never change your tutor group. I watched one of my children especially be really unhappy, and I just felt the school didn't care. We will never be in a position where parents could ever say to us, you don't care. I couldn't do it to people.
So it's not set in stone and
nothing will be set in stone.
immovable.
You have to have policies, but we're dealing with people, and the child's needs are absolutely utmost, in the school when it opens.
Now we've got a comment here from Chris. It says, the fact that the school is underpinned by the church ensures that children will learn and be nurtured in an environment of high values. Not only that, but the school will be directly accountable to the community via the church. If something didn't seem right, for example, underachievement of certain groups, it would get fed back to the school, questions asked, and something done about it quickly. Also, as you point out, it's not about ramming church down people's throats. It's about high moral values, excellent learning environments, and accountability. Also, half the places are available to non-church attenders, so it's not just for church people. Everyone needs to get behind this vision. God bless and good luck. I'm not a regular churchgoer either at present, but I'm praying hard for this to succeed as a believer. And that was from Chris. Now, I'd like to ask you, because I am a believer in education. I could talk about education until the cows come home. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about the curriculum. Could you tell me about the curriculum, what you would adhere to?
Yes, and this is crucial for parents to understand. Being a teacher myself, I'm well placed to talk about curriculum, and I recently completed a master's degree in education, and curriculum was one of the things I studied because I felt so passionate about it, and it's really helped me to understand what curriculum should be. A good curriculum should really reflect the values of the society that the child lives in, and lead to qualifications which are recognised. But you see, I think in the state sector we're too blinkered, and we end up with too much of an exam factory, and I think that's unhealthy for children in terms of stress, but the narrowness of the field. What we've proposed to the government, and they seem to be happy with it so far, is that we've got two distinct curricula, and one is an accelerated self-directed, personalised curriculum, which is very hard to do in the state sector, and the other is part of the national curriculum. And so this accelerated programme would mean that each child would work at his or her own pace, unhindered by anybody in the class, not sitting there. You couldn't sit there and just do nothing, because the teacher knows exactly what you achieve, and a record is kept of what you've done that day. You set your own goals at the start of the day, and you have to evaluate whether you've achieved them at the end of the day. And each child would spend a couple of hours per day working through English, maths, humanities and biology, all the way through primary and all the way through secondary, and come out with an internationally accredited qualification at 16, which is equivalent to GCSEs in these subjects, but without exams. That's the key thing.
Without exams?
I know, it sounds too good to be true.
Is it possible?
It is possible if you're kept on track, because it's because of the way the course works and is accredited. It doesn't need you to take exams at the end of the course at 16. If you're not on track, you wouldn't fail and then do what many children have to do, which is go somewhere else to the sixth form and start your GCSEs all over again. You would actually just stay on for another year until you've completed the material. But as long as the school accredits you, and we would have to be judged as worthy of accrediting it as well, it's also externally validated. And I know it sounds too good to be true, but I know a number of children who've been through this curriculum elsewhere, and they've gone on to grammar school, sixth form, or some of the top universities, or just to regular employment.
Now, if I could pause you there, let me ask the youngsters in the studio about this again. Would you prefer a curriculum where you didn't have to do exams? Is it sort of like coursework?
Well, you basically work your way through this self-directed, personalised study. The course material is there, and you work your way through it in liaison with your form tutor, who is your mentor through this course. And there will be specialists on hand if you're stuck in maths or English or biology. But you don't have to do things the GCSE way. It's a fallacy that that's the only way.
Okay. So how would you feel about that? Youngsters in the studio, do you think you prefer that method, or do you think you'd have enough discipline to stay on track and have your own? Robin, let's hear from you.
Well, I know I wouldn't at that stage. I do now, but that's part of the grown-up process. Can't get my words out today. I do apologise, listeners. I always preferred exams. I don't know why. I always needed that sort of pressure to get it done.
Okay, some people thrive off the pressure, don't they? And some people crumble under it as well.
True. It's a very personalised thing. For some people it works better the other way, some people it works better that way.
Yes.
Can I just say then that for those like Robin who need exams and they need that buzz and the stress, there will be GCSE exams
as well.
Because what we intend to do is to offer national curriculum alongside, so there would be exams in chemistry, physics, languages, art, music, sport. We would want to offer children the whole curriculum, but the great thing is that no student needs to leave having failed English, maths and a science and a humanity. And if you add a language to that, then we should see very high numbers of people leaving with the English baccalaureate.
Tanya, what do you think? What would you prefer?
I'm not saying I'm not disciplined enough, but I prefer to do exams, because it's just getting it over and done with straight away, and the pressure's just off. Do your revision and then it's over.
Okay. Roche?
In a way, I kind of prefer the coursework, because even though I'm not saying I'm the perfect student and I always do my work and I'm always on time and on track, but I would, if I knew that coursework is what was giving me my grades, I would push myself. But then whereas with exams, I get too under the pressure and then I get too stressed and then it just becomes a problem. So I think I prefer the coursework, because then I know that at least if there was something wrong, then whereas with exams you'd have to retake the whole exam, but then with the coursework you could just tweak it, and even that could help you to get a higher grade. You could just do a certain section. If that's what missed your grade, then that's what you could do.
So it sounds like the City Academy would give you this option to have not just this one rigid way of doing it. It's differentiation, isn't it? There are different alternatives for different skill sets or what your preferred learning style is.
I think the great thing is that children will have different experiences. They'll have a couple of hours a day where they learn to think for themselves and work in a self-directed way, which Althea Watkins told me is exactly what kids need. You know, that there's too little of that in state schools. But at the same time, they'll also have opportunities to be in the big class environment and work in groups and do projects. It's the best of both worlds, really.
Best of both worlds. Now, as you said, a big class environment, because when you said about having the self-directed study, because I work in a school, the first thing that came to my mind was behaviour management and how that can impinge on this self-directed study. How big will the class sizes be?
Maximum of 20. And we know it can work because we've balanced the budget already, and we've demonstrated to the Department for Education that we can run this school on classes of 20. Each class will have a qualified teacher and one, possibly two teaching assistants to 20 children.
Okay. That's a very good ratio. And will you be dealing with I'm assuming special educational needs and statements and things like that?
Absolutely, because it's fully inclusive. And this course that I mentioned, the accelerated course, is also available to children who need a lot of support.
Things have changed. So, I mean, I didn't leave school that long ago. When did I leave? Like 12 years ago, I left school. I'm having to think. You're laughing. Juicy is in the studio and he's laughing now. I'm not that old, you know. Not that old. He's giving the old cough. I left school 12 years ago, but education has changed quite a lot in the way that it's packaged. I mean, when I was going to school, we didn't have these things, AS levels even. So when I look back, things have changed, and it seems like there's a new phase that will come through as well, and it could be beneficial, although I'm sure people will still say the system is being dumbed down, as they do every year, because exam grades get higher and higher.
Of course, and we just have to prove that it's not the case. But you see, the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and when you see the standard in thinking and maths and English of children who've come through this course, I mean, the wonderful thing is you can work at your own pace. Your tutor will keep you, you know, make sure you're progressing. But if you're a really smart kid or highly motivated, nothing will hold you back. And I know one lad in the city who's about 21 now. You see, he finished his A-levels at 16. He did them at 16. And then, because there was nothing else to do, he went to grammar school and did more A-levels, and then went to Oxford Uni. You know, so you can fly if you're going to, or get a lot of help in, you know, walking if you need that.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming. It's so interesting. I know that time is running out, and we don't have. Perhaps you could come in again to discuss more about it, because there must be so much you could tell the community.
Oh, I'd love to. You know, if we get the funding, you'll hear me shouting from the rooftops, and I'll be coming in to tell everyone it's opening. We got it.
I'm sure you'll be back. And remember, listeners, the key thing that we'd like you to do is sign up to the website www.cityacademygloucester.co.uk and sign up to let the government know that you would choose the City Academy as your first choice, and that will help achieve the funding. They only need 80 names, and every single name helps. Does it mean if I was a parent and I signed that petition, would I have to send my child there?
No, there's nothing binding whatsoever.
Okay.
And we will only
no one can knocking on my door.
Absolutely not. No. But at the same time, please only sign up if you really mean it. We don't want to deceive the government, you know. So
exactly.
We're just looking for real support, because also we need to be able to gauge the level of support as well. So please don't make up kids' names that don't exist.
Yes.
Just because you want to see the school, you know, real kids only, please.
Thank you very much, and keep GFM informed, and we wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Music, news, information, advice. GFM.